Collecting Godzilla movies on VHS is not only really fun, but can be extremely rewarding. Compared to other series and IPs, Godzilla seems to be really unorthodox and tricky when it comes to collecting various movies in the franchise. This can be really dangerous for someone trying to buy VHS tapes because they could end up overpaying for something they could have gotten for cheaper, or ends up with potentially a product you are not very satisfied with. So I decided to make this video to help simplify the process for all levels of collecting Godzilla VHS tapes. This is the definitive guide to collecting Godzilla VHS tapes. We're going to break this video down into 4 skill groups: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and master. Each area will give you tips and tricks that will help you develop your Godzilla collection to greater heights. Let's begin at the beginner tier. You see a bunch of cool VHS tapes for Godzilla for the first time, or you're someone like me who grew up nostalgic for a specific tape or two. I want to bring that nostalgia back. However, you end up on eBay and you are completely overwhelmed. You might even be overwhelmed trying to find the specific one from your childhood even. The big scary question you're asking is, where do I even begin? The answer to this question is simplify. But how do we simplify this, what feels like a monumental task? It's good to first know some basic VHS fundamentals. The first thing being that VHS tapes were produced between the mid to late 70s all the way up to the year 2006. South Korea specifically had a few tapes released in 2007 and even 8, but they're exclusive to Korea, and in the case of Godzilla VHS tapes, this is a issue you will not have to deal with, as no Godzilla movies were released between this time period for this to even be possible. Why is this so important for collecting Godzilla VHS tapes? Because it means there are about 31 movies that you could possibly have on VHS. And depending on how you look at it, that number could be narrowed down to 26. I won't be mentioning them too much here, but I excluded some of the cartoon related ones like the Godzilla 98 cartoon show, along with the Hanna-Barbera one. If you would like 2 recommendations for tapes to start out with, then I highly recommend either the 1998 Godzilla film, which is just one of the most common films in general to get on VHS, or the Godzilla 2000 movie, which is also easy to get on eBay, but for some reason not as easy to find out in the wild, at least from my experience. So now you've been able to grab a handful of tapes, but you want to expand the collection and take it to the next level. Now we're in the intermediate realms. Unfortunately, there isn't exactly an easy way to get all the movies on VHS fast, so you're unfortunately gonna have to handpick a good chunk of them on eBay and just buy individual listings. And I'd say don't spend over $15 on a tape, at least as of making this video. You shouldn't have to, and pretty much every single movie should be available in that range. If it is something that interests you, what can speed up the process are box sets. There are a couple Godzilla VHS box sets that you can get for around under 30 to 40 bucks depending on where you get it, and they'll come with around 5 to 3 tapes depending on which box set you're looking at. If you are going to buy multiple box sets though, do be careful and do your research. This is because you might end up getting a dupe of a movie if you're not careful. Unless you want multiple variations of a movie, try to be calculated when it comes to getting the box sets if you're just trying to get new movies. Now, there are a few exceptions to this rule, which I will get to later in the video, but like I said before, as long as you're spending under 15 bucks, you should be okay. Now we have a pretty solid collection of Godzilla tapes. However, you want to somehow take it to the next level. Now it's time for the advanced tier. This is the point where we start to get the really good and really rare stuff. But also, here is where we have to be more careful than ever. What makes Godzilla movies in particular rather difficult at times to collect is how many variations some movies have, especially when it comes to the older movies. Unfortunately, I can't go over every single variation because there is just that many. Especially for movies like Godzilla vs. Megalon, for some reason, has a lot of weird and random versions. Many of these variations sometimes are exclusive to one movie. And it really doesn't help that both the US and Japan pumped out multiple versions of the same movie at times, making it even more difficult to find a specific version at times. To dramatically simplify this situation, there's a few questions we can ask. The first one is, do you want it in English? Do you want it subbed? Or do you just want it in Japanese with no subtitles? This is a really important question because you want to make sure you're getting what you thought you paid for. So before you end up buying a rare variant of an older Japanese movie, make sure it has what you're looking for. One good thing I will tell you is that Japanese VHS tapes are NTSC, so no matter what, it will work properly in your VCR if it is NTSC. If you're PAL, there are ways to convert it. Amazon and other stores should have converters that could switch the process depending on what your VCR is. Whatever you do, just don't overpay for a VCR that actually plays the tapes you're not able to play. You will just spend way too much money. Now, on your Godzilla tape collecting journey, you may have noticed that there are a few movies, in particular, a lot of the millennial ones, that are really difficult to come across. This is because these last round of Godzilla movies were exclusively released in Japan on VHS and nowhere else, most of them only getting one variation. Godzilla 2000 does have a Japanese variation as well. This makes these tapes a lot more difficult and a lot more rare to obtain. But out of these ones, there is one that rules them all. It is now time for the master level. By this point, you pretty much know everything you need to know about Godzilla movies, the rare variants, and even some of the rare, harder to find movies. But what are the holy grails, the rarest of the rare, the most difficult of difficult to obtain? That boils down to one question, believe it or not. Are we talking released or unreleased? If the answer is released, then the rarest movie I'd argue is Godzilla Final Wars. This is because the movie was released in 2004, and by 2004, most distributors of any company were long gone from VHS, and it was only a handful of companies at this point that were actually producing things in VHS. Thankfully, Toho was one of these companies, but I doubt they sold many of these copies at all. Even the DVD in Japanese is rather rare and expensive, so I can't imagine how many tapes they actually sold. Thankfully, Godzilla Final Wars on DVD is readily available and not too difficult to obtain. Same with the other millennial movies, but Godzilla Final Wars on VHS is a rather nightmare to get your hands on. But what if I told you there is something rarer than everything I have mentioned? tapes that are so rare, they never released to the public levels of rare. And are so rare that some of them are even lost media as of making this video. Allow me to introduce you to the special effects VHS tapes. Very, very little is known about these tapes, so I'll do my best to explain what I know as of making this video. These are VHS tapes that were used as a promotion for the movie before the movie released. How these were obtained is still not entirely known. From what I found online, you had to win some sort of competition, but it may have been given out to people who worked on the film. It is really hard to tell. There appears to be one of these special effects tapes for all the movies before Final Wars. I have not seen any evidence of a Final Wars version being in existence. The latest one I've seen is Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which to my knowledge can be found on YouTube. Again, I am not sure if it is the exact same VHS tape, but it is a good behind the scenes of the Godzilla Tokyo SOS franchise. What makes them extremely difficult to obtain is the fact that they are exclusively in Japan for the most part. I have never seen a copy outside of Japan, and I actually had to go to a Japanese eBay reseller who sold me my Godzilla Final Wars copy to get it over to the US. I do plan on getting my copy uploaded eventually. I'm just really lazy, but I hope the same can be said for the other special effects tapes. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Peace.